Two environmental groups are continuing their opposition to a gas pipeline project proposed in our region. They say the lawsuit recently filed in the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals could make or break this country's goals to reduce international carbon emissions. The lawsuit claims that the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, which governs new gas infrastructure projects, is not considered the climate impacts of the proposed pipelines, such as the 261 upgrade project. We reached out to FERC and they declined to comment. The proposal would install 2 miles of gas pipeline and a compressor near Springfield. I spoke with Jane Winn, the executive director of the Berkshire Environmental Action Team, and asked why it's bringing this lawsuit now.
Now, because FERC has once again totally ignored their obligation to look at greenhouse gas emissions in deciding to allow a new fracked gas project to go forward in Agawam, Massachusetts. We believe they're required under the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, to really look seriously, or what they say in legal terms, give a hard look at what the emissions from this project would be. And they completely decided not to look at all.
And FERC is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, but more commonly known as FERC. And for FERC's point, they contend, as I understand it, that type of emissions recording would not be needed, and sort of that's their very truncated position on this. But the lawsuit that you're bringing says that FERC, which oversees these projects, as you have pointed out, has not considered the climate impacts of the pipelines and other infrastructure. What do you believe the impact is?
Actually, can I back up to FERC saying that they don't have to consider the impact? They say it's unknowable, but at the same time, they go on to then find that the impact is negligible. They can't have it both ways. We see the impact as, first of all, we're in Massachusetts, where we have the Global Warming Solutions Act that legally requires our state to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And you can't reduce greenhouse gas emissions by adding more greenhouse gas emissions, especially emissions that include methane, which is a much more powerful greenhouse gas.
And your concern is that these pipelines, just by the nature of them being extended, and at this point it's still a proposed project, although it has passed 2 previous regulatory hurdles that beat and others challenged, and you weren't successful in those 2 challenges. So this is where we are in this project. We started talking about it back in 2018, so it persists to this day. But back to my question. With these pipelines being proposed, and correct me if I understand this correctly, your concern is that the emissions would be coming from the extension of these proposed gas pipelines, right?
Right. Well, the emissions will come from the increase in fracking to be able to provide this extra gas, and from the burning of the extra gas, and from the transporting of the extra gas. So we know there are emissions. We have the claim of how much gas will be transported. Seems to me you can come up with a pretty good estimate of what the increase in emissions will be. And then it's FERC's job to figure out whether that's allowable because we, in theory, need this gas or not. And we would say, or not, because the 2 buyers of the gas, one has said, never mind, we don't want it, and the other is no longer in business.
And you're referring to Columbia Gas, correct?
Columbia, exactly, that was responsible for the huge explosion
in the
Merrimack Valley.
So presumably they would say that they'll find other buyers, I imagine, if they were positioned, if they were posed that question. Now, FERC's current policy, as I understand it, is to review emissions during the construction phase of the project. Why do you disagree with that approach?
I think absolutely they should consider the emissions during construction. But that's just a minor piece of the overall picture. They need to be considering the entire emissions because we're in a global crisis of a climate crisis. So certainly Massachusetts recognizes that and has set up laws to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, and yet we are continuing to build.
And in terms of FERC measuring, or FERC's wanting to measure during that construction phase, is that how they've always approached projects like this, or is that something new? Do you know?
It depends on your timeline. It's new compared to decades ago, but they've been doing this for a while. And certainly Massachusetts, when we passed our Environmental Policy Act, one of the things that was added in quite a while ago was recording greenhouse gas emissions within our state. We do not, in our review, look out of state, which we should be doing.
Because you think that this could have not only local consequences for the Agawam and Springfield Extension project that you mentioned, but also nationally?
Exactly, nationally, and basically this is a global problem. We need to be doing our piece, and part of our piece is limiting our use of these global pollutants.
I mentioned a moment ago briefly that you've challenged FERC in court on at least 2 other occasions related to this project. I could see FERC looking at this and saying, look, you've lost twice before in court. You're just trying to crack this nut a different way. What would you say to that?
Well, I would say one of their commissioners strongly agrees with us. Commissioner Glick has written scathing dissents to the court's position, or to FERC's position, sorry. And he agrees that they are not following the National Environmental Policy Act, that they are ignoring their responsibility, and that really it's already been legally decided that they should be considering this. So hopefully, slowly but surely, as more and more organizations bring these lawsuits to make the point that FERC is not following the law, eventually we'll win.
In terms of this project, it's, as you mentioned, the Agawam project, but it's also part of this Greater Springfield Reliability Project, as it's called. What do you understand the point in which that project is right now?
Well, as I understand it, there are quite a few cities and towns that are deciding not to expand their natural gas infrastructure. There are towns like Brookline, which is outside of this, that have come up with bylaws to say no new fossil fuel hookups. And I think that's the way we're moving. To limit our greenhouse gas emissions, we're going to have to stop and, well, scale back and then stop using fossil fuels, which will mean all this new build out ratepayers are going to be paying for decades, but only using for a few more years. So we need to start making the changes, protect ratepayers, protect our air quality, and stop using so much fossil fuels.
And for this particular lawsuit, Berkshire Environmental Action Team brought it with the Food and Water Watch. And the attorney for Food and Water Watch, Adam Carlesco, said this in part, that he believes that the actions are dangerous, politically charged, and called it the unscientific status quo that places the thumb on the scales in favor of pipeline developers. But pipeline developers, this is their business. Don't they have the right to pursue expanding their project?
Well, I would say the ratepayers who end up paying they get about a 14% profit margin on their pipeline building that ratepayers are required to pay. I think the ratepayers deserve some consideration here more than the pipeline builders.
And given that the 2 companies that you mentioned, one that's completely withdrawn, and Columbia Gas, which now it's even in question if they'll be doing business like this in Massachusetts, who might step up and want to purchase this gas? Do you have any sense?
I believe it's going to be Eversource, and that just having a utility that's both purchasing gas and producing electricity with that gas seems like a very bad monopolistic idea to me.
Is that something that might then be challenged at the level of the Department of Public Utilities, saying that this is an improper practice?
Could be, and actually I think it may already have been challenged, but definitely I am not a lawyer, and BEAD is very, very grateful to Food and Water Watch for providing such a fantastic lawyer for this lawsuit.
Lawsuits are nothing new for Berkshire Environmental Action Team, but are you finding that you're needing to challenge these types of practices more often in court, or is this kind of what you've done historically?
Well, historically, we've challenged more wetlands laws more locally, which was much more comfortable because we have much more expertise as a staff in those issues. So this, we're having to partner with larger organizations. It's often at the federal level. And definitely our expertise is in the environment, not in legal issues.
So what's the next step for this process?
Well, I think we see where it goes. We're relying on Food and Water Watch to really keep their eye on everything and keep us informed. And we'll hope that it really comes before the district court and we can make a case.